Welcome, everybody. Today, we're talking about uncovering your teen's unique story, how to get your child to shine on their college application and kind of break through everything else that college admissions folks see. How do you make your child stand out? I'm your host today, Ann Dolin, and I have a specialist in the room with me today, and that's Renee Minnich. Renee, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here with me today.
Thanks so much, Ann. I'm super excited to be here.
Just a bit about Renee. She's a college consultant here with me here at Educational Connections, and I'm so lucky to have her on our staff because she has so much history in college admissions. She's been in admissions prior to coming here for 30 years, and at the senior level as associate director at Rochester Institute of Technology, which is a selective school specifically for STEM applicants. And during that time, she's reviewed over 20,000 applications. And that's helpful because it's not just, what people think makes a good application, but it's really the best value you get is from working with somebody who sat on the other side of the table and knows what colleges really want. So, Renee, I'm so happy that you're here with me.
Thanks so much, Ann. I'm really excited to share some of the things I've learned over the years.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay. And I thought we would just have a conversation today. And I'd love to start out by, just the basics. Tell us what you do every day in working with kids.
Absolutely. So, one of the things we talk about is the student's college admissions journey, and that's really what it is. My job as a college consultant is to meet every student where they're at and then create a tailored plan that guides them through the process. And this is different for every student. It can mean career exploration, it can mean academic exploration, crafting a personal narrative, and of course, we also talk about the college search process, building a college list, essay editing, interview prep, all of those types of things. And there's, actually a great deal more that I can help with. But first, I typically sit down and just meet with the students and their families, see where they are in the process, and then see what kind of support would work best for them. What I try to do is to take all that stress and pressure off and help navigate the college search process. It actually can be enjoyable. It doesn't have to be a super stressful process.
It's interesting this time of year, Renee. We're seeing lots of our students get their college acceptances in, and it's so exciting for them and for their parents. But it's really clear in this day and age that, it used to be, you got good grades, you had good test scores, everything's fine. But now there are so many other variables. And part of that is, making yourself, as I mentioned, stand out, really crafting your narrative so your story shines through. Um, Really, schools want to see what is unique about you, what is your authentic voice. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that mean to you?
Absolutely. So, yeah, that term crafting your narrative has really become kind of a buzzword over the past few years, and it can be very confusing for families. First, let me say I love this time of year. I love seeing those acceptance letters and scholarships coming in. I get emails from students almost every day saying, hey, I was admitted here and I got this scholarship. And it's really exciting to see when that tide shifts from I hope I get admitted to the stage where they're getting all those offers and deciding on which one they're going to take. But yes, college admissions is not at all like cut and dry any longer. In the past, it was about like presenting this polished, perfect application, and you just went ahead and applied, and the strongest academic students were admitted. It's really changed over the years, and now so many colleges are using application review in a different way. It's a very holistic process, and they're looking for students who present these authentic applications, not this polished perfection like they had before. And that kind of begs the question of what exactly is an authentic application. And it really is that they're looking for students who reveal something like deeper about themselves. They want to see who the student is becoming, not what they've accomplished, but what they're becoming and what they would add to campus. So, then the next question is, how do I actually do this? This is one of my favorite things to work on with students. I sit down and have this long conversation with them about everything that they've done, experiences, activities, interests, passions, also failures and how they've overcome them and successes. And then we try to take those experiences and we build an activity list And we share these experiences through their essays, resumes, if they're doing interviews, talk about how they can share them in interviews as well, just so that they're presenting their whole self and not just their academic grades.
Renee, I'm just curious, can you give us a couple of examples of that?
Sure. So, essays is probably a really strong way for students to present who they are and what they're becoming and their values and their beliefs and their growth. So, I've read many, many essays in my time, and there's always certain topics that come up. And one of the things I read mechanical engineering students for many years, and for whatever reason, there's so many essays about Legos when you apply as a mechanical engineering student. And so, I remember one student that I worked with, and, same thing, mechanical engineering, and he said he wanted to write about Legos, and I said, tell me why. So he's like, oh, I opened up a Lego when I was younger, and it really sparked my interest, and, kind of told me the same story that I've heard from other students. So we dug a little deeper, and I said, where did you get this Lego? When did you get it? And he ended up telling me this story about that he and his mom were didn't have a lot of money one Christmas, and his mom found an unopened Lego at a thrift store and brought it home. Excuse me, and it was one of his gifts, and that really sparked his interest. And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! What a great story!" Then he went on to tell me that every year since then, once his mom and his family got back on their feet, they would donate an unopened Lego to a thrift store every year, just remembering what happened to him. Now that was a totally different essay. That was a totally different experience than the typical Lego essay, and it really showed his character, his growth, his impact that he could have on campus. So that was just one really good example.
I love that story, Renee. That's awesome.
Sure. I have another, if you don't mind me sharing
Sure,
a
I'd love to
second
hear.
one. So I also worked with a student this year who was in a women's leadership program, which I love seeing those in high schools. And, but one of the things when I asked her about it, when I saw it on her activities list, is she said, it wasn't a great experience at first. And I said, oh, tell me about that. So she said when she joined, she was in ninth and 10th grade, and she didn't have a strong voice in the group. It was really the 11th and 12th graders running the group. She didn't like the way they ran it, but she kind of stuck it out because she wanted to keep it on her list for activities for when she applied to college. But when she moved into 11th grade and she was the one making the decision making, they ended up pulling in the younger students to make the decisions together. So she said it was so much better once I got there, not because I was running the group, but because we changed the group to be better for everyone involved. And right away, I was like, okay, you need to write about that in your essay. So we kind of expanded on that together, and that really ended up being a great essay for her for a lot of different topics that came up, and even some of the supplemental essays, and was a way to take something that was a little bit smaller that she could really show her leadership in and the way she grew within that activity as well.
I love that, Renee, especially since, kids are often stymied. Like, what do I write about? And well, I'm not really a leader. I mean, that's a really great example of somebody who didn't have a leadership position, but really made change.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, students think, they have this list of activities, and, sometimes the goal is just to get as many as possible. And that's not really what we, admissions officers want to see. They really want to see you commit yourself to something, to grow within something, to make impacts, because that's exactly what they're looking for in students who are coming to campus as well. They really want to have these vibrant, active campuses, and they want to make sure that the students they're admitting and who are enrolling are going to continue and grow those traditions on campus as well.
Renee, you talked about essays that you helped kids craft, but also on the other side of the table, when you read through 20,000 essays, what would you tell students not to write about, or maybe to avoid a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. As students are writing their essays, they're often talking to their friends too, I think. And then we kind of end up with all of these similar essay topics through. And when you're talking about your personal narrative and having your application stand out, you want to have your application look a little bit different, and that includes your essay. It's really a unique opportunity for students to share who they are. When you're applying to colleges, you're presenting so many numbers, your GPAs, SAT or ACT scores, ranks in class. I have told students for years that that essay is your open invitation to share who you are as a person. The topics are normally so broad that you can definitely pick something that you feel passionate about. That is one of the things I work on the most as a college counselor when I'm working with the students at Educational Connections is to really look at their past, look at the things you're interested in, find the things they're passionate about, and then draw these stories out of them. Of course, I don't write the essay for them, but we work together and we typically will, find a bunch of topics, make some bullet points, and then I kind of hand it back to them and have them take it from there and then help with editing so that, they're really presenting themselves to the admissions committee. There's absolutely a few things I encourage students to avoid. One of them is to tell the admissions committee something about yourself. You don't want to tell them, you want to show them. So instead of saying, I'm hardworking, say, here's an example of something that I did, how I showed how I was hardworking. That's really what you want to do is to have these specific examples. Most students who apply to colleges are hardworking. So just to say it isn't enough. You want to give them an example of how you were hardworking. The other thing I tell students is don't try to figure out what the admissions committee wants to hear. We see that all the time. Like super polished essay with really big words and trying to like impress, and I think this doesn't make any sense. Like it's even difficult to read because you can tell the student hasn't connected with it. So that's when we go back to this authenticity. You want to come across as authentic and you want to pick a topic that you're passionate about. Trust me, if a student does that, that essay is 10 times easier to write and really comes across as true and authentic to the admissions committee when they're actually learning something more about you. And then, of course, we typically see the same topics over and over. And if you ask any admissions officer, they probably have a list of 5 to 10 topics. If they never read another essay on that again, that would be fine. So, having that experience when students bring up those topics, if they feel passionate about writing about them, usually I'm like, okay, we're going to dig a little deeper. And like we did with the Lego story, okay, this is a popular topic, so tell me how it's different for you. Let me help you draw that story out so this essay really portrays who you are when it's landing on that admissions officer's desk.
That makes sense, Renee. I just want to pause for a second. If anybody has a question, please, we'd love to answer these at the end. Throw that into the Q&A if you don't mind, and we'll be sure to get to it. All right, Renee, so you talked a lot about the essay, but there are lots of other factors that admissions officers look at. Tell us about other ways kids can craft their unique narrative.
Sure. So you're correct. The essay is a big component, but it's just one of them. When admissions officers and admissions committees are reading your application, it is a very holistic process. So you want to think about how you're presenting every piece to them and what kind of impact that will make. Everything is impactful, including your activities. We talked a little bit already about the list of time you've been involved in those activities, leadership positions. It's not about volume. It's about actually getting into them and making that impact. Many students these days create a resume, which is not something I did when I submitted my college applications, but a resume is a great way to not only show activities, but also part-time jobs, internships, shadowing experiences, and even responsibilities at home, like caring for siblings. We see that a lot these days. And so anything that you are doing outside of the classroom should be part of that. And a resume and presenting it in that way sometimes allows you a little bit more text availability. The activities list on the Common Application is a very small box for you to be able to write in. So presenting a resume is really a great way to give you a little bit more detail about some of these other activities that you have done.
Renee, what about course selection? How does that
Mm.
factor in? And actually, it's a good time that we're talking about it now because most kids will choose their courses into January or February.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm working with all my students on right now, 9th through 12th grade. Because when you think about course selection, it can be very important and very impactful. A lot of the classes in high school are sequential and they build on one another. So even if you're not picking the right course in ninth grade, it's tough to get those classes in later that might be required. So January is always a time when I'm discussing that with students. And there's a couple reasons we do this. One, we want you to take the most challenging classes possible while still doing well. So that's a fine balance. Not everyone can jump into an AP class, but students should be able to take as high level classes as they can and not the easy way out. Trust me, admissions officers will see that if you're taking the easy way out, especially senior year. So if there's any junior parents out here and your children are picking their course selection for the fall, really important that they take a good course load. And the other thing is that a lot of programs and a lot of academic majors in college these days require certain classes prior to enrolling. And so, if you have a passion for a particular major in engineering, a computer science, lots of different majors in those areas require specific math and science classes. So you really want to be thoughtful of that as you're developing um, your thoughts on an academic major in college and picking the right course selection. So yes, super impactful to think about grades and classes and sequence and levels of classes that you're taking. So that's really important to think about as well.
Renee, what about testing? It seems like for a while there, everything really was test optional. Now we've really moved away from that, where colleges, sometimes even if they say they're test optional, they do prefer to see a test score. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about that and what's changed in the last 6 to 12 months.
Sure. So, when obviously during COVID, a lot of colleges went test optional, and we're really seeing them now change back to requiring tests or even saying they're test preferred. And there's a number of reasons for that. Colleges did see an increase or an increased retention problem with students post COVID, and that can be for a lot of different reasons, but testing could be one of them because it can be a really good indicator of how successful a student can be in college. High school transcripts in high schools across the country are all so different that you're really comparing apples and oranges every day, trying to decide if someone can be successful in a program. And I think that fact alone is something that a lot of families don't think about when admissions officers are looking at students and trying to decide if they're going to admit them. One of the primary things they're considering is, does this high school transcript prove to me that the student can be successful in the program at my college? And so when you're thinking about it that way, having that extra component of the SAT or ACT scores in there is very helpful in determining that a student can be successful. So yes, we're seeing a return to test scores required. We're seeing a return to test scores preferred. And even in the test optional schools, we are seeing an increase in the number of students who are submitting them. So I definitely think that's something that students should think about and consider certainly taking the SAT or the ACT. There's a lot of changes this year coming with the ACT going digital. Will we be having a webinar on that or
We
anytime soon,
are, we
Anne? Oh, good.
are.
Okay,
Yes, for
good.
sure. That's a big one, Renee.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of information out there about that. I'm starting to get a lot of questions from families of juniors right now.
Mm.
So yes, testing is a big question. And when I'm working with students, the answer is not always cut and dry, yes or no. That's one of the important things we talk about. It will be a yes or no for each school that ends up on your list. So we may say, okay, based on the information I have about this school, you're going to submit your test scores, but for this school, you are not, because we'll look at middle 50% of students who have been admitted in the past, how many students submitted them. So there's a lot of things that can really go into it.
Thank you, Renee. That is so very helpful. I appreciate that. And I just want to share with you a little bit about the programs that we offer. Renee touched on those a bit. We work with students 8th through 10th grade. We have a specific program for juniors, and then also our Senior Express for students that are going into their senior year or they're already a senior. And you can scan the QR code and learn more about our college consulting services, or you can go to our website, which is ectutoring.com. There's a drop down for college consulting, and we're happy to talk to you too. This is a real quick, usually 15-20 minute call to learn about your child, share a bit about our programs, and see what we have, see if what we offer is a match for what you're looking for. And that's, of course, free of charge. But Renee, thank you so much for being our expert today. You provided so
Absolutely.
much wonderful information.
Great. Thank you. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. I enjoyed it. I have like already 2 pages of notes. It's awesome.
Good.
Thanks everybody for being here this afternoon. I wish you all the best in the process with your child. And I hope we helped to dial back some of the stress, and that you maybe went from a 4, which was your number on a scale from 1 to 10. And maybe now it's a little bit higher than that and you're feeling better about everything. So thanks again. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.